Welcome to this second Women's Climate Congress conversation. I'm Lyn Stephens, a member of the WCC and your moderator for this morning. We have people from all over Australia joining us today, and we're delighted that you've been able to join us, that you've taken time out of your day to have this conversation with us. Before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge that our speakers today are meeting on Ngunnawal, Ngambri and Gadigal lands, and to pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and to thank them for their ongoing stewardship of the land over many thousands of years. And I'd like to acknowledge in a similar way the elders in each country where those of you who've joined us today are located. As well, it's really important to note that today is the first day of Reconciliation Week. And the theme this year is highly relevant for us. It's in this together. And one of the comments they've made about that is, when we come together to build mutual respect and understanding, we shape a better future for all Australians. I think that's something we can all endorse, and particularly in the Women's Climate Congress. The theme today we're exploring is how women can take the lead to turn our culture towards non-partisan collaboration for united action on climate change. It's drawn from the WCC vision, which we'll talk a bit more about in a moment. Later in this session, we'll share with you our plan for forming a network of women across the nation to work together on turning the tide on climate change. We're joined today by WCC Founder, Dr. Janet Salisbury. Welcome, Janet. Honey Nilsson, welcome, Honey. And Louise Tarrant from Australia Remade. Welcome, Louise. And we also want to make this a conversation with you. So please add comments and questions in the chat as we go through. The richness of the conversation will be greatly enhanced if you're part of it. So feel free, please use the chat, which is down at the bottom of your screen. If you just click on that, you can type in a comment or a question at any time during this session. Bit of housekeeping now. Sarah Stitt, thank you, Sarah, is a founding member of the WCC and a member of Chorus of Women, and she'll be our technical monitor for today. If you're having any technical difficulties, please type them into the chat and Sarah will assist you. We do intend to record this session to put it on our website and Facebook page. So if this would cause you any problems, please let Sarah know. As well, if you prefer, you can turn off your video by clicking on the video icon down in the left-hand side of your screen and just participate in the audio. And if you look up on the right-hand corner of your screen, you can change from speaker view to gallery view if you wish. Speaker view will obviously focus on who's speaking, and gallery view lets you have a look at who's here today. That's the end of housekeeping. Now we'll get on with our conversation, but to start that, we believe the arts are a really important part of human life. And to bring us together today, I'm going to ask Janet Salisbury, in her capacity as a Chorus of Women member, to introduce our musical offering, which is called After the Fire. Thanks, Janet.
So a Chorus of Women has been singing together, mainly in Canberra, to help sustain the cycle of life since 2003, when we were formed. The summer of that year, which unbelievably is 17 years ago now, brought a devastating firestorm to Canberra. 4 people died and 500 city homes were destroyed. Amid the communal grief after the fire, chorus songwriter Glenda Clockley wrote about regeneration sprouting in the bush and in the people's love songs of sorrow and care and belonging to each other and the natural world. So this is called After the Fire, sung by a Chorus of Women.
Thank you very much, A Chorus of Women, and to Johanna McBride, who is musical director of A Chorus of Women, for helping us put that song together and bring it to the screen. Thank you, Johanna. Okay. If you'd like to know more about A Chorus of Women, you can visit them at their website, achorusofwomen.org. Moving along, I'd now like to introduce Dr. Janet Salisbury. She's the founder of the WCC, as you're probably aware, and we introduced her in full in the last conversation. So this is going to be a shorthand version. And if you want to know more about Janet, please go to our website at womenscongress.weebly.com. Anyway, here's the shorthand version. Janet's a scientist, a science communicator, a businesswoman, a choral singer, and a social change activist. She's deeply committed to encouraging conversations that matter on contentious public policy issues. And all of this has led her to the founding of the Women's Climate Congress. And I'm going to ask Janet now to set the context for our conversation today by telling us how notions of women's leadership underpin the vision and purpose of the WCC. Janet?
Thank you, Lyn, and hello everybody. Thank you for joining us again. Some of you for the second time, some of you for the first time. It's lovely to have you all online. In relation to the longhand or shorthand version of my bio, I think that the shorthand version is quite fine, because we don't want to give the impression that we need to be highly qualified to do this work. We're all in it together. Everyone has something to contribute, and while some of us bring some credentials to the table that might have helped us think about things the way we have, really, I think the song that we just heard says it all. We are the weavers, we are the singers, we are the dancers, and it's all of us together. So that's just a little aside. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our vision. I'm just going to share a screen with you. This screen here shows you our vision statement. It says we share a vision to restore climate balance by 2030. In the future, women's leadership has helped turn the tide of political culture from polarized discourse to collaboration and cooperation. Nurture of life and care for the earth are at the center of every government decision. So our focus is a bit different to other organizations in that it's about cultural change. So we're about trying to overcome the current political roadblocks to action on climate change. And so we're going to do this by suspending judgment and developing a collaborative culture where we can talk across party lines. And also by bringing the core values of compassion, love and empathy into the political discourse. So we've developed some aspirational statements in relation to this, and in a minute I'm going to speak about a couple of those. But I just wanted to say that as women, we have the propriety, I think, to speak on behalf of future generations, to bring the moral force of the world to bear as the brave school strikers are doing. It's profoundly shocking to me and to many others that young people are deciding not to have children because they think that the potentially catastrophic dangers of climate change will make the world unsafe for another generation. Just think about that for a minute. The cycles of life are breaking. It's not only the women that have this propriety, of course, it's a human issue. But women's representation in decision-making has been very slow over the past 100 years. And when we do get a seat at the table, we've been trying to fit in to structures that were not designed by us. So we don't really know what women's leadership would look like if we designed it ourselves. First Peoples women do know about this. But in our industrialized country, we've not yet reached a place of balance between women and men. So at the moment, we're working together as women to find a place of clarity for ourselves so that we can work collaboratively with men. It's not so much ideological as experimental, and we do enjoy getting together as women, and we feel that we can really get to the heart of problems and have really good conversations. So we're working it out. Importantly, we're not politically aligned, and we'll work hard to engage women from all political perspectives and walks of life. At the moment, we seem to have more older women in our core group, but we do have a mixed age range in our Facebook group. Our statements of values and commitments are here, express how we think we can make the cultural change. So I'm going to highlight a couple. These two that say, as beneficiaries of the industrial age, we acknowledge our responsibility for where we are now. And the second one, that we're weary of conflict and polarization. They are really at the very heart of the change we hope to bring about. Drawing a line in the sand on past differences and forming relationships that allow issues to be examined from different standpoints. This can build trust that mediation on what currently seem like intractable issues is actually possible, and will even provide a more honourable way out of the current difficulties. It's going to be hard. This is difficult because our culture is currently nowhere near at that stage, that there isn't that trust. And mediation is a broad concept, ranging from a style of communication through to a more formal process. As a style of communication, it involves listening, suspending judgment, engaging with open questions, genuinely not knowing the answers, as most of us don't really, avoiding jumping to solutions. I think the presenters on the ABC Drum programme do this quite well, and there are other examples, but most of our public discourse is not like this. I'll say a bit more later about how we're hoping to get started on all this. But I also wanted to say that this isn't a soft quality, this isn't a soft, naive or a sort of polite option. It's a very principled and authentic expression about what is actually the right thing to do. That is to stabilise the climate so that the generations can go on. How we get there then can be a question of a collaborative interpretation of expert advice, as has been the case for COVID-19. This strength is expressed in this one of our statements that I've highlighted here, the bottom one on this page. We assert the qualities of the heart, compassion, love, empathy, forgiveness are the basis of true strength. These human laws must be reactivated for us to survive. So often the women in our working group and in our meetings that we've had so far find this statement one of the most moving ones, because it sort of reintroduces these values back into our discourse when they've been missing. And just to finish, I want to make a little mention of our foremothers. It's good to know that we're riding on the shoulders of other women that have been here before. One of the women in the World War I peace movement who has inspired us is Aletta Jacobs, the Netherlands' first woman doctor, who was chair of the organising committee for the 1915 International Congress of Women, the only peace congress held during that terrible war. In her opening speech of the Congress, and keeping in mind this was 100 years ago, when most women did not have the vote, she said, "Our cry of protest must be heard at last. Too long already has the mother heart of women suffered in silence. I feel strongly we must raise our voices now. If the new era of civilization that will arise from these ashes," that's World War I, "is to rest upon a more substantial basis. Important as are the economic interests of a country, the interests of the race are more vital." So I'll hand back to Lyn now, thank you. And I'll stop sharing. Yeah.
Thank you, Janet, for that lovely introduction and setting the context for our conversation today. I'd like to introduce you to Honey Nelson. Honey is a vet, a pilot, a writer and artist. She spent many years in Central Australia, flying herself to remote communities where she developed a deep respect and lasting relationships with First Peoples. In recent years, she has been working to bring First People elders and knowledge holders together with settler scientists and other thinkers to share knowledge and develop a new blueprint for custodianship of country. I mean, that could be a whole conversation in itself, Honey, which maybe we'll do in at another session, but today we're focused on women. And Honey's latest piece of writing is called Woman Song. It's a combination of prose, poetry, and visual artwork. And I'd like to invite you now, Honey, to read us a short piece from Woman Song called Daughter Song.
Hello, everyone. This is, I'll just read this as it has to do with us as women and with our descendants as the children, and our origin, of course, our ultimate supreme loving mother, the Mother Earth, which of course is why we're here today, and to undertake to relieve her suffering the best possible way we can. Mother Earth, I am your daughter. In my belly lie your children. Cry out their voices through me. Sing children's voices through me. I will call to all their song. We must call to sky their song. I am Earth Mother's daughter. Her heartbreak cry cracks from my body. Oh God, save my children to hear the music of the dawn. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you very much, Honey, for that. It's a lovely introduction, in fact, to the first question I'd like to ask you. And it's going back to the values of the WCC, and one of them says, as holders of a great and universal desire to look after the young, we raise our voices, confident in the potential of women to lead universal change. So, Honey, I'd be interested in, why do you think women are particularly called to address the existential threat of climate change?
I think that is one of the most fundamental questions that the world needs to ask right now, Lyn. And we live in a world which overwhelmingly is governed and dominated by men in every possible way, and including even our so developed democracies. We'll be talking more on that. I think all of us are the infrastructures and the heritage of thousands of years of thought, from lineages of kings and priesthood that has dominated our culture right up into the last 3 or 4 generations. The infrastructures haven't changed, women are enfranchised, but I would venture to say that we still don't have, our woman thought still has very little effect upon the enormous body of law and political structures and economic structures in which most of us operate. And so for us, I mean, these institutions, this thought, this solo man thought, the solo patriarch has brought us to the point where our children are on the point of being sacrificed. And that's how I see it, that we are knowingly, as electorates, as voting democratic electorates, we are nonetheless allowing our institutions to abandon and sacrifice our children in the full knowledge of what we're doing. And I think that's what horrifies me so deeply, is that we know. It's been 3 generations that amongst informed and fortunate people such as ourselves, we have known about the crisis that is coming, and as electorates and our inherent institutions have not moved to avert this earthly and physical catastrophe, but extraordinary moral catastrophe, which I can hardly believe we're on the point of sacrificing our children. There's no other species on earth that does that. And so we won't. but we have to find the way through to bring our voice to the collective loving human psyche, so that balance of parenthood, father and mother, is there, and together we will realise that we cannot let this happen. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say that thank you. That's a very powerful statement, honey. And I was going to ask you to go on. And another one of the values of the WCC talks about activating our collective imagination to uncover innovative and equitable and sustainable ways forward. So having set the scene in the way that you have, how do you believe that we can activate the collective imagination, and what's women's role in that?
Well, I think it's actually a tactical problem, Lyn, which is why we're here. We know the need. I think we deeply acknowledge, and as many women would find it in their hearts too, to realise that we've come to this dreadful pass because there is no woman thought to balance man thought in our governance. Sorry. And what I'd like to address here is actually the tactics, recognising first that it's fine. It's perfectly okay to be a woman who likes to be manly, as I found in a lifetime some country vet work. It was fine to stride out there. People liked it. They didn't mind at all that I was a woman doing a man's work. But you try to be a bloke who wants to be a hairdresser or a dancer, and they're horrified. Oh, you've got to be gay. It's still a very deep strain of thought in our collective thinking, I think, that women are somehow a bit frivolous, a bit silly, we don't really get it, and we don't understand the conduct of tough business. And so tactically, what I'd like to talk about is how we actually call up the message that we get out, the fundamental appeal that we can make that will touch all people in our society. Women who are not advantaged like us, many of them are not particularly educated and haven't had all our privileges. The men, the equal numbers of men in our society. If we can, I'm suggesting that we actually get right back to the very basics as a foundation or a bedrock of our message, that it's this matter of abandoning our children, that to hold to the principle of parenthood, that we come together as mothers, aunties, grannies, cousins, sisters, and answer the appeal that went out a couple of years ago now from I'll never forget seeing that young lady, Greta, in where she was at the United Nations, looking into the camera and saying, "Your children will never forgive you." She's right, and if we can use that as a bedrock, our answer to Greta. I haven't seen in 2 years peoples and countries rising to meet and to formally answer that tragic appeal from kids. We're out there in the streets joining them with climate change, but I feel that it's time for the parental response led by women. And it's partly tactical because we can, it's a matter and it's a right and a propriety which cannot be denied by anybody in our society. It's not frivolous, it's not stupid, it's not inattentive, it is parental. And all people, all men and women, can respond to that. And from that, I think, I'm part of all this because I just love the idea of a women's council, and that we actually transform, we commit to changing the infrastructures of our governance and the whole manner in which we communicate and operate as a society with the guidance of women. But initially, we've got to bring a whole country with us. And we won't do that by calling for a wisdom council, I don't believe. That's our ultimate plot. But I think tactically, it could be an idea to talk about the message, the fundamental message we wish to put out about why we have gathered together as a Women's Climate Council, because of the overwhelming threat to the children of the future, and that we can stand up and say proudly to Greta Thunberg and all the kids out there in the street, we are with you, we are going to lead for change. And here we are, here's the mums, we're going to take your hands and we're going to go with you. So it's tactics, really, what I'm talking about. It's not only emotions, but it's actually, a campaign.
Thanks so much, honey, for that. And please put comments and questions into the chat. It was a very stimulating contribution to the conversation. It was sort of like putting our flag on the hill. So thank you, honey. And it's a lovely lead-in, in fact, to Louise Tarrant, who's done a lot of work with her organisation, Australia Remade, on a new vision for Australia. So Louise is the chair of the Secretariat of Australia Remade, an independent vision-based collaboration of community leaders and individuals. And their centrepiece is a 9-pillar vision for Australia. It was developed after wide consultation, and it gives hope for what Australia could be at its very best. And they've very generously offered it to the Australian people. It's available for anyone to use from their website at www.australiaremade.org. Now, Louise is also on the board of Greenpeace Asia Pacific and the Climate Action Network. She was National Secretary of Uniting Voice after being in that union for many years herself. And that's a union supporting people working in many low-paid occupations such as cleaning, aged care, hospitality, and early childhood education, many of whom were women. So welcome, Louise. Please unmute yourself because this is your chance to shine. At the WCC, Louise, we just loved your recent blog. What if we centered radical love at the heart of our politics? Now, love is almost a 4-letter word in politics today. Why do you think this is? And how do you think radical love could change Australia's approach to climate change?
Thanks, Lyn, and thanks for the opportunity for participating with you all today. So I appreciate that very much. The why question probably could take several days, so I will give a shortened version. You'll be pleased to know. And I think it actually goes to the title of Reconciliation Week, In This Together. And I think what, if you go back to a very simplistic descriptor, but if you go back to Margaret Thatcher's comment, there is no society, what we've really been living within for the last 4 or 5 decades is a system that essentially has tried to individualise us and actually take away the fact that we are in this together, and to actually try and impose on society a sort of a notion of economic rationality where all our individual motivations are purely economic, that we don't have any sense of compassion, care, connection, community, and tried to really sort of downplay those sorts of notions to the point where, and it's interesting, I think Janet's comment about, what's being advocated in your own value statement is it's not soft, it's not naive. I think Honey talked about not being frivolous, and I think this is where we've been painted into this corner of when we talk about emotions, where we talk about notions or values aligned with a compassionate, caring, connected community, where somehow not playing in the main game, because the main game is very technocratic, it's very economic. Values are only valuable if they have a price tag. And so we've basically been either sidelined, and so when we raise a notion like love being centred in our politics, we're laughed out of court or not seen as a key player. Or we're just seen as being, or it forces, the other thing it does is it forces us into being essentially oppositional, because if you assume that value set of competition, not cooperation, individualism, not collectivism and solidarity, if you take that value base for an economic system, we're invariably going to come into conflict with it on all sorts of things, not only related to the climate, but to do with a social safety net, to do with universal services, to do with how life functions. And so when we're constantly put into the oppositional camp and never propositional, we never get to set the agenda. We're always reacting. And we're also often reacting from very siloed positions, because there's so many things that we're responding to. And so we never get to build the social solidarity that we need to win on a big issue like climate change. And we never get to actually, I think, direct the agenda, because the values are just too opposite to where we're coming from. And so it really needs a realignment of the values underpinning our system for us to really rethink the future and reshape the future. And so, you know, I think what you're doing is spot on in terms of what you're trying to do in being a values-led and a very clearly values-articulated organisation and process. And I guess that's the key. If we can actually, you know, you talked about, in that the lyrics in the song struck me, bind me in longing and love, bind me in longing and love. The thing about love is, you know, Elie Wiesel has this wonderful saying. He's, for those that may not be aware, a Holocaust survivor, a long-term human rights activist. He says the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. And so when love binds, when we're able to articulate a philosophy of love, we actually automatically connect. And that's the key if we're going to overcome either indifference, trivialisation or polarisation. So, and I'll just say two very quick things, Lyn, sorry, on how that relates then to the second part of your question of climate change relevancy. You know, one of the values that Australia Remade has, we have three values: equal worth of all people, unity with nature, and interdependence and community. And that unity and love of nature is core to our sort of focus on having a people and planet focused vision of the future. And so, you know, it's hard to, if you're going to break out of the notion of the environment just being a resource, it's there to be dug up, it's there to be cut down, it's there to be processed. It only has value when it has the price tag. If we're going to move away from that to the intrinsic beauty, to intrinsic valuing of something that's beneficial to us all in its natural state, then it does need the value shift, and you do need the language of love or the language of the sorts of values that are encompassed around that. It also allows us to build, I think, coalitions across divides of whether it's class, identity, whatever the sort of movements that we have, and we have many different movements and they don't always coalesce together as effectively as we could and should. I think the language of love is something that enables us to connect across, I think, many different movements. And so there's something very valuable in it, and I see it as a very active notion of, it's a verb, not just some, you know, nice affection. It's actually a commitment to seeing ourselves in others and to working together for all those wonderful things: care, community, compassion, solidarity.
Thanks, Louise. Before we open up to the three speakers in a more panel-like way, I just wanted to ask you briefly, Louise, what you learned through your very wide consultations in developing the 9-pillar vision for Australia through consultation, and how that could be relevant for the WCC. Now, what did you learn from talking to so
Sure.
many different people?
So we went out and talked to lots of different groups and individuals in different communities and circumstances, locations, etc. I think what we found, which is incredibly reassuring, but we tend to forget, is that it's not values differences are not a binary situation. It's not like, you know, some in the population have these terrible set of values and then this other set has these really good set of values. Often we have them all mixed up inside ourselves, and different values are primed at different times. And our circumstances and context and our politics and our discourse often pulls us to more extrinsic type values around competition and profit and maximising, you know, our circumstances and getting ahead for us and our family and being an individual. But at the same time, you know, we might have some of that politics, but we still care about our communities and we still care about each other. And so it's about how do you prime those intrinsic values that speak to the sorts of politics I think that your value statement in Australia Remade certainly focus around. And what we found in the community, and this is borne out by the work of people like Rebecca Huntley and others, there's a very strong values alignment across the community around some very core issues. And the 9 pillars that we have in our vision statement actually were not contested by and large in all the sorts of discussions we had. People had different views about how you get there, how they might be articulated on the ground. But when you talk to people about, did they care about nature, did they care about community, did they care about, you know, the future for their kids, did they care about actually people in the rest of the world getting a fair go? By and large, people were positive. And so I think we too often run our campaigns in a negative sense and we never find that common ground. And so by being much more positive, I think, in putting values first, I think we can build a much broader coalition.
Thank you, Louise. We're going to now look at kind of pulling some of those threads together in how women's leadership can turn the tide on climate change. And I was going to come back to you, Janet, to ask you how you'd like to see this progressed in the Women's Climate Congress. So I'll give you some time and then hopefully we'll come back to Honey and to Louise to just bring this, bring some convergence on this.
So we would really like to start sharing these ideas, the ideas that we've been talking about here today and also at our last one of these conversations, through a network of women across the country. So to get that started, it would be really great if people could go to our website and use the join up form there, because that lets us know where you are and we can start putting people in contact with other people in their area. And so we're actually putting together a kit, an information kit, to help people get conversations started, some guidance of the sorts of things that you might want to, or how you might want to run local conversations about these issues amongst yourselves in the broader community, and also to start conversations with your local representatives to let them know what we're talking about, and also to let them know that we expect them to collaborate and that we're looking to collaborate. We're in this together. We're going to work it out together as a collaborative thing, resolve the past differences and get on with the job of stabilising the climate so that we do protect our young people. It's interesting that the school strikers, and I went online for 2 hours to their recent event a couple of Fridays ago. They use what I would call very mediative communication. They talk about what must happen. They have a very strong sense of what needs to happen, but they don't sort of vilify our politicians publicly, or but they have a very holistic view as well of the society that they want. So it's those sorts of conversations that we want to get started through our network. And in the interest of letting everyone have a bit of a go, I might stop there for a moment, and we can come back to more details about how you can join up later. Yeah.
Okay. All right, honey, would you like to just pull together your thoughts? I mean, you've talked about the notion of parenthood as being a universal uniting force. How do you see women, the action that women can take to turn the tide on climate change?
Lyn, I've been an activist for 50 years, and one of the realities that's come home to me over all those years is how difficult it is to actually raise a movement. And I think in this situation I'm not going to address the matter of how we do it so much as a sort of the shape of the situation, I suppose, that we know we've got a children and climate crisis and an awesome responsibility. This is one of the things, the message I feel that we can use to get out. I'm not sure how. I wish I knew how, but the message that to call out really to women, to parents across the country, across the world really, but to recognise that our structures and our public thought are abandoning the future. And one of the things that comes to mind is at the moment and during the quiet time, the lockdown time, as Janet mentioned before, we were on the point of bringing together a gathering of elders, men and women, Aboriginal old people, to discuss this matter, which is absolutely horrifying to them. They are very aware. It's part of their deepest ethos that they have a responsibility to pass on a goodly place that came to them, and that they must pass it on beautiful and intact. That is their responsibility to the next generations. And I feel that it's an opportunity here that there are many of us. I can't build media, how to with media and messages and stuff. I don't know, but I'd be happy to work behind the scenes. I'm about now to make about 25 phone calls to lots of funny old people across the country, and we're going to get together and get their young people in and see if we can get the old people Zooming. And initial response, yeah, let's do a Zoom. And eventually, I think it could be very beneficial to link up, particularly with the women, Indigenous women. They have always had a supreme and absolutely equal responsibility for law, for governance, for ethics, for land management. They've got a lot of their own very special sacred business, which is women's concerns. And of course, their business is particularly focused on children and provision for the next generation. So that's something I would like to be able to report back on at a later date, but that could be a most valuable and loving alliance. It's hard to express their horror at what's happened to their country. They're like somebody who's got their hands tied back behind their back, and they're tied up to a post, and they're watching while their species are trashed, their land is trashed and burned. They are absolutely powerless to do anything about it. So that's something I'll just mention anyway, that I would like to bring to the table at a considerably later date. And again, it's about motherhood, parenthood. When I talked about it to myself, I realised we're 100,000 years old, Homo sapiens sapiens. That's 5,000 generations of guardianship, women's guardianship of future generations. We're the last two generations in which, whoop-de-doo, here we all are, aren't we lucky? We've got it all. But we have not relinquished our absolutely ancestral women's role as guardians and spokesmen for those who cannot speak for themselves. And so I would like to be involved in setting up the sort of, helping to set up the kind of bedrock, not principles, the tactics, which we can use to maximise our call that can touch the hearts of all people, men and women, and of all ages.
Thank you very much, Honey. You've sowed many beautiful seeds there, and we certainly will follow up on those. Now, I'd like to ask you, Louise, just to bring your thoughts together on how women can take leadership on climate change and what we can do. Thank you.
Look, I think at the moment we're coming off the bushfire summer, through the COVID experience, and in that period, bizarrely, we've seen elevated a whole range of values and community outpourings that we really need to embrace and hold on to and elevate. And so, and I think women are uniquely placed to be both the voice and the vehicle for that. If you think about, you know, prior to the bushfires, you know, it was very hard to put community at the centre of any political discourse. It was very hard to elevate why we care about nature or our sort of wildlife, or we didn't really care too much about the environment in it. Oh, sorry, that's not right. I think we did care, but it was very hard to get that into the centre of our politics. Suddenly, we had people experience all those emotions and more over the last few months of why community is so essential, why the public infrastructure is essential, why our nature needs to be protected, why our wildlife is so crucial to our future. How do we keep that focus and not get lost in the sort of build back process? I think is critical, because for the first time in decades, our values have been lifted up and people have seen why they exist. And I do think that that's aligned very closely to the sorts of values that you're expressing, we're expressing, others hopefully are. How do we bind that and not become fragmented and caught back into the old economic first arguments?
Thank you, Louise. So there's another emerging theme is that of alliances and building a network of people who are committed to these things. And I would also like at this point to thank you all for the chat comments. And to pick up on one theme that's come out in a couple is, and it's related to that idea of alliance, is the idea of, you know, not speaking to the converted and to our own echo chamber. How do we reach out to other people? So I might put that to you, Janet, about what the WCC is thinking along these lines, because it's lovely that we have these conversations, but we probably are speaking very often to like-minded people. How do we reach out across difference?
Yeah, thanks for that comment. And yes, it is absolutely part of what we want to do, is to reach across those divides. So that's a big challenge we have. So part of the networking that we want people who are engaged with this initiative to do in their local communities is to actively reach out to people who they maybe wouldn't normally know or wouldn't normally agree with, or aren't in their normal tribe, if you like, and we really do need to work hard to do that, and that is sort of a number one priority. So we're going to be following up very actively on that, and there's, in our information kit that we sent out, there's some notes about that issue as well. So and what we want then is feedback back to our central hub about how those conversations are going, so that we can use that to help us do it more, you know, to find out what's working and do more of it. People often ask, you know, you seem to be, some of you seem to be women of a certain age, how can we get more younger people involved? And I just wanted to say that we do have a number of I said earlier, younger people involved on our Facebook group, and I actually asked one of our young Facebook members, Savannah McQuirk, what it was about the Women's Climate Congress that appealed, and she wrote to me and she said, She thinks this group is very valuable to young people as it provides a pathway to make meaningful action guided by people with decades more experience. She says it really is a privilege to be included and provided an opportunity to ask questions, propose ideas and discuss topics on an equal platform. So that sort of was an encouraging thing. And I think it's, you know, we've got to be confident to sort of reach out to these other groups and not feel that we don't have something to offer. We do have something to offer. So, you know, I think that's an active challenge that we need to take up.
Could I make a suggestion just alongside? In reaching out, there is a large body of women of all ages, hopefully plenty of older ones too, because I think we have very, very important leadership role in our society. But it's the Gaia mob, the Earth Mother people, and there is a mighty challenge at the moment. Our very own Mother Earth. We have this kind of vernacular. We talk about Mother Earth, but for many people, probably some here, and certainly including me, for a long time, we've realised that the Earth actually is a real mum. She's the good Gaia. She's the one we love, the one who provides all that big metaphor of Mother Earth. Amongst the people who are concerned with the life of Gaia, it's not just a metaphor, it's a reality. She's a huge, conscious, suffering being. That's what my book's about, basically. She's having a totally awful time. The song that Janet put up at the beginning is related to the story that we performed with the Chorus of Women, The Gifts of the Furies. Just talking to my old mate, Aboriginal mate, Kevin Buzzacott, the other day, about the fires and what's been going on. He said, look, she is so upset. She's so cross, the old girl. She's suffering. She's also angry at her progeny and our misdeeds. You could take that how you wish, but whether we see it as a metaphor or as a literal truth, it's coming back to bite us in a terrible way. But there is a whole realm of invitation and understanding out there if we take not only as a foundation for our purpose and our broadcast, not only our rightful and unassailable stance as parents and grandparents, but also as spokespeople as spokeswomen for the Earth herself. And I think that is one resource that could be of great value to us. There's ever so many ladies now who are seriously experiencing the life, the spirit life and the distress of the Mother Earth. So there's a thought for outreach.
Thank you, honey.
I might just quickly say that our questioner, I think, was saying how would we reach out to people who maybe don't already have this sort of spirit life, and we can find strength in our own numbers of people who do believe that. But yeah, I think one of our challenges is to reach out to others as well, and bring them along our journey. Yeah,
I think I really love the kind of language of she's pretty cross, the old girl. That might reach out to a few different people. You know, there's a language around Gaia and all of that, but she's pretty cross, the old girl, has a nice direct side to it. Louise, would you like to comment on this too? About reaching out across the divide, reaching out to groups that are not with us today?
Look, I think polarisation in the community is the death knell of progressive politics. So if we want to do good things based around the values that we stand for, we need to find common ground. I think it's there. I think it's there in the values. I think we're deliberately showing a path that brings us into conflict and opposition too easily. And that's why I know at Australia Remade, for example, we try not to get too caught into the formal political sort of arena, because that is set up to be an area of contest, not of cooperation. And so I think your idea of reaching into community and finding other voices. I think in the article that we wrote, we referred to American feminist Bell Hooks, and she talks about, it's interesting, she talks about Martin Luther King's pursuit of a love focused agenda versus the Black Panthers, and the difference of how, you know, the Black Panthers were more radical and certainly built a very devoted following, but it was a much narrower base, whereas Martin Luther King's more incremental agenda based on love was able to build a whole movement. And I think it's a very interesting comparison of when you centre love and the sort of values of compassion, care and community around that. You can build across divides and across formal, you know, electoral politics. I think they become irrelevant in that conversation.
Thank you, Louise. Janet, I can offer you 1 minute if you wanted to say something right at the end and before we finish up.
So I just want to say, just to finish up, that thank you again for taking part. And we basically, my last message is we really do need help. And we need help. The sorts of things we need are, you know, people who can offer practical assistance like graphic design, people who know a bit about media, people who know about organisational structures, and also about reaching out to different groups in the community. Everything, you name it, we need. So if you feel that you have something to contribute, and we all, yes, and everything is welcome, please get in touch. Join on that Join Us form on our website that I mentioned earlier, so that we sort of know where you are. And there's a place there you can write in the sorts of interests that you might have that might be relevant for us to know, to offer to the organisation. And just send your ideas. We just love to get ideas. And if you've had a conversation, even if it's just a coffee with one other person and something interesting came up, please write to us and let us know. Let us know about it so that we can build. We want to build on what we're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. And thank you, Honey and Louise, for sharing your thoughts and ideas so fruitfully today. That was just lovely conversation to listen to and to be inspired by. Thanks also Sarah Stitt and Johanna McBride for technical support today. And thank you for coming and for the comments. We will save the comments, and I can't tell you how lovely it was to receive them, because sometimes we feel like we're up here alone, and to just hear people saying, yeah, that's interesting, or I'd like to hear more about that, is really encouraging. The Congress is only as strong and effective as its membership and the people who are involved with it. So please do sign up on our website and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Get a kit from Janet and have a conversation. Everyone is welcome to join us, and we've loved having you today. Thank you all very much. That's it. Bye.